Welcome, everyone. This is the Tuesday Triggers podcast. Christian here, and of course, we have one of my closest homies in the space, one of the best agency owners out there, one of the OGs, if you will, that knows everyone, has done it all, and just generally kicks ass. Justin Chi from Cold Email Hackers. What's up, brother?
Yep. Yeah, awesome to be here, man. Glad to be speaking, and I know we've known each other for a really long time. So yeah, awesome
Yeah,
to finally be on the podcast.
yeah, man. It's fucking awesome because
Yeah,
generally speaking, for those of you that don't know Justin, again, we met a couple years ago in
yep,
early SaaS Yacht Club days, and we were
yep,
always going back and forth, and he's always building his agency, and like
yeah,
every time he would hit the next hurdle, I would be looking up to him saying, "Man, like you're killing it," and so, um, Justin does a really um thoughtful way of lead gen. He's kind of repositioned a few times, but generally speaking, he is about as good as it gets, as dialed in to the point where he doesn't need crazy amounts of customization. He doesn't need crazy, you know, 14-page clay tables. Like he is just really, really, really good at dialing in a company's offer, at building infrastructure correctly, at following the basics to a T, and just running insanely good outbound email campaigns. So,
yeah.
that being said, Justin, would love to maybe get a state of the union. Why don't you give me an update on where you're or how Cold Email Hackers is working nowadays? Like, what's new with
Yeah.
you?
So as with any other agency, we had some issues with deliverability recently. We've kind of got around that, thanks to you guys kind of helping us out with the infrastructure. But I would say biggest thing for us is we're pretty drilled down as far as who we're working with, right? Like, I think in the beginning, you and I have talked about this a lot. Like, we had some trouble kind of figuring out the best fit clients. We're not so picky necessarily on the industry of the client, but for me, the biggest thing that we kind of vet for before we sign anybody on is whether or not they have a sizable TAM, and of course, like whether or not the offer is decent. So that's the only two things I look for. We could talk more about this in this session, but I think that's just kind of like a basic update as far as where we've been. And you've known me for a couple of years, I think almost 3 years now. So you've kind of seen like how we've iterated. I think you knew me when I still had a job, like when I was working at Zoom Info. So yeah, things have changed a lot since we first started. And I think we're kind of narrowing down on the specific offer for the agency, right? Like we had some trouble kind of ironing things out. And I know I always tell you this for a copy, but we just went back to basics. We're doing straight paper meeting, and that's what I started with. We tried a bunch of different models. We're back to strictly paper meeting again. And I can talk about why we're doing that, but that's sort of what's going on here. So,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this. So you
yeah,
mentioned, the things that are important for a good client
yeah,
is a large TAM and a good offer.
yep,
So what makes a good offer to you nowadays? How do you
yeah,
see something and say, yeah, this is good. This is going to
yeah.
work with cold email. This is golden.
So, a couple of things, obviously, like a large TAM, but the biggest thing I look for is if I speak to a client, like we're on a discovery call and I'm asking them questions, usually I'll try to figure out like, okay, where do you get most of your customers? And if they say referrals, like that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but if they have experience on the cold traffic, whether it be through ads, cold call, email, whatever, that usually indicates to me that they have some level of success, right? Like if they're able to sign clients on cold traffic, that usually indicates like, hey, we're able to make this work. And ironically, I know I talked to you about this a lot in our WhatsApp chats. Most times, like IT companies, cybersecurity, cybersecurity, maybe it's just me, but IT services, especially, I know that's one we talk about a lot. Rarely, I don't think I've ever come across an IT services company that has done cold outbound really successfully, where they're like able to close deals from cold traffic. So that's just kind of an example of one that we don't work with, but
Oh, it's so
generally,
tough,
that's the
man.
question. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there's a couple industries, man, that are just brutal, and
yep,
I think that like recruiting was particularly tough for us.
yep,
I know it can be cracked though. I know that you've
yes,
cracked dev shops a few times,
yep,
but realistically, for me, I've had two companies that have almost the same offer, and
yep,
one will work and one doesn't,
yep,
and it comes down to crafting your offer, really.
yes,
So what do you think about that when you bring on a client and you're like,
yep,
you look at what they've been doing, and so this is to help
mhm,
everyone, right? I'm not
yep,
asking this question to help agency owners. what do you
Yep.
do when you when you see a client, you're like, dude, this offer is just
Yep.
shit. How do you help them refine that and make that better?
Yeah, it's mostly down to, so the biggest thing I would say, especially when talking to clients, is there's two components, right? There's like a risk reversal, which is becoming really popular. Like Hormozy, everybody's talking about like, oh yeah, you need to like offer a guarantee or whatever, right? So it's like, I think people kind of put the cart before the horse there. The biggest thing is, does your value proposition tie into one of three things? It has to either save money. We're talking B2B, of course, but save money, make money, or save time, right? So it's one of those three things. So you have to kind of start there. Now it's like, I talk about this in my course. I'm not showing my course here. I'm not like a course guru, but if you go on my LinkedIn, you can buy my course. But anyways, one of those three value props. The thing is, most people who are sending cold emails, I would say like at least half of people who are sending cold emails, like any B2B company, they're kind of just talking about their service. They're like, oh yeah, we sell IT services. We help you implement XYZ. Or they're like, hey, we help you implement your, I don't know, your Salesforce or whatever. Like, it's not really a value proposition, right? You're selling a service, you're selling a product, whatever. Fine. Like if you send enough emails to sell a service or product, not really talking about value propositions or pain points, like you will get meetings, but it's just like going to be a very low conversion. So to kind of get a higher conversion, I think top 20% cold emailers, they're always tying it back to one of those three value propositions, right? The step after that, and we're talking strictly fundamentals, right? The step after that, I think this is where a lot of people miss because, we're in a lot of the same groups and we kind of see the same thing over and over where people are talking about email is, they have a pretty good script. Like I look at a lot of people's scripts, they're like the standard. We do the same template. It's like the standard 4-5 sentence cold email where it's like observation, pitch, whatever. Like you guys know how the standard template looks like, right? It's like 700 words. But I think where a lot of people kind of miss out on is you're talking about those pain points, one of those three value propositions, and every other person, like 20% of cold emailers, like top 20% of cold emailers are sending the same thing. And those top 20% of cold emailers, they know most of the fundamentals, like how to set up inboxes. They're sending high volumes as well. So like your prospects are getting a ton of those emails and they're getting a ton of emails promising them like, hey, we'll help you save time, make money, save money, whatever. And it's like, you have to find a way to stand out, right? So I think the biggest thing is, as far as like standing out in the inbox, is sort of attaching a unique mechanism to the emails that you're sending, right? And I'll give you a good example. Like we had a client that sells SEO, right? Like SEO is a really saturated space and it is generally hard to get results. And we didn't get the most, we got pretty, I would say for us, and I have a pretty high standard for myself, but for us, I would say somewhat average results. But kind of what we reconstructed the pitch to, instead of saying, hey, we'll help you rank higher, we took a look at their case studies and they had nonprofits, like higher ticket, like larger nonprofits as clients. What we would do is we kind of tailored things down. So we said, instead of saying, hey, we'll help you rank higher, we say, hey, we can help you attract more grantors, attract more donors, attract whatever. Another example is like lawyers. Like we ran a campaign for lawyers. And instead of saying, hey, look, like we'll help you rank higher, what we said instead was like, instead of relying on lead sites like Martindale Nolo, Just Law, or whatever, like those websites where these lawyers sign up and then people go on those sites and then that website sells the lead to like 5 different lawyers. We're saying, hey, look, instead of using these sites, we can help you, excuse me, we can help you get high quality exclusive leads at a cheaper cost or something like
Yep.
that. That's how we're framing it. So I think framing the offer where it's like a unique mechanism, that's kind of the next step above the standard boilerplate cold email advice.
And so for that, if you're doing that, and that's
Yeah.
like the hard, again, you
Yeah.
make it sound so simple, but like the
It really
minutia
is
is,
though. That's the thing. It is pretty simple. Like I know it's like you have to iterate a bit, but I think if you run enough campaigns after some time, it's really just trial and error. Like you just have to test a lot of different campaigns, sit down with your clients or sit down with your customers, whatever, think about how they talk about the problem. But I think you just need to run a lot of campaigns and figure it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So with those campaigns that you're talking about,
Yeah.
don't need crazy AI, don't need clay tables on clay
Yeah.
tables on clay tables. Really
Yeah.
just need to segment your list well, right? So
Yes.
if you're selling the product to 3 different verticals, you just need to change that one sentence and you need to
Yeah.
resegment your list. Now, I think, and you're going to tell me that this is like, you know,
Mhm.
wrong, but I think that there's
Yeah.
an art in list and targeting, and I'm
Yeah.
not particularly good at it anymore. Like
Sure.
I've lost my edge on it. So with all of these sequences, right? Again,
Yep.
you're talking about sequences that aren't super clay heavy.
Mhm.
You're really talking about, hey, this sequence will work for three
Yep.
different verticals. You just need to change like one
Mhm.
sentence.
Yep.
Now, the problem being is then to do that well, you need
Yep.
to really target well.
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of people get lost, and
Yep.
myself included. I don't have that competitive
Yep.
edge, and I can't do a great target list and these small, perfect target lists and then speak to each one of those very well. But I
Yep.
know you can. So can
Yep.
you talk me through your process of creating these,
Yeah.
excellent lists and then how you
Mhm.
go through that?
Yeah, so 2 steps to our process, right? And it's I try to really dumb it down for people, no offense. But what we try to do basically is, like, let's say I'm working with a client, they have case studies, they have existing customers. So there's probably like top 3, top 5 customers, different verticals. So I try to create a lookalike list. So what we try to do in this case is I'll go into ChatGPT. I'll say, hey, I'm using Apollo IO. Here is one of my existing customers. They're in this industry. Can you give me 50 keywords to use in the keyword filter to identify competitors of XYZ company? So that's kind of like, what we mentioned before in our chat was like how to create those really like targeted lists where we're speaking specifically to the industry. Like that's how we're creating those beginning campaigns. But like obviously that process is not too scalable. So it's like after I run these 5, 6 campaigns or whatever, where I'm like making these really targeted lists, I have an idea, right? It's like generally we're sending to the same job titles regardless of industry, right? Like maybe we're sending
Yep.
in marketing or operations or sales or whatever. And it's like maybe we don't have to be in those. It depends on the client, of course. But for me, most of my clients are industry agnostic, right? So it's like maybe we don't have to be super targeted in these specific industries. But now it's like we have a sample set of data where it's like we have these 5, 6 campaigns that we know for sure work pretty well. We know the language they speak. We know the pain point that's resonating. I can just go take that same campaign, that same formatting. I plug it into Clay. I pull a massive list of, let's say, like marketing. Let's say we've been sending marketing. I'll just go pull a massive list of marketing and we'll just pull the company description and we'll write some personalization based on that, those batches of successful campaigns. And we'll just have GPT sort of generate like those personalized lines where it's like, hey, you know, kind of what I mentioned earlier, basically with the lawyers and the nonprofits, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, man, it's great. And I'll be honest, I think it's really important that anyone is going in running campaigns
Yeah.
is like, you got to figure out your value prop, and
Yeah.
you can primarily only find out your value prop with just static copy.
Yeah.
Like you can go write the craziest Clay campaign, or you can have
Mhm.
the best incentive, or you can do all of this other crazy stuff,
Yeah.
but like they might be answering for all the wrong reasons. You need to actually figure out why your
Yeah.
client's product sells, right? Like
Yeah.
what is their value prop? And oftentimes that is not an easy thing. Like literally
Yeah.
cold email isn't meant for every single thing, pretty much everything, but there's a few
Yeah.
cases where it can't. So that
Mhm.
process and that learning is great. I love the idea. And so
Yeah.
let me try and phrase this, understand this in reverse, right? So
Sure.
you go find case studies on their website.
Yep.
You find whoever the case study is for.
Mhm.
You go into GPT. You say,
Yeah.
hey, give me 50 keywords for Apollo.io, which will kick out
Yeah.
more companies like this.
Mhm.
You grab that list, you write the email. It probably references that case study specifically,
Yep.
and write that email and you run those. Now,
Exactly. Yeah. Just
when you
try to keep it pretty targeted. And yeah, I guess another part of the process, we have the standard 4-step email. I'll say we're going after this industry. I'll plug it into, well, Jesse's tool is Lead Magic, but he has a little GPT plugin on ChatGPT. I'll just go in
Mhm.
and say, hey, look, can you take a look at this copy? Um, how can I make this more specific to XYZ industry? How can I clean this up? And then we just run those. So
I love it, man.
yeah.
Tell me this. Tell me about the email hackers course.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. It's definitely email 101. So like if you're more advanced, you already know how to use Clay, you know how to do a lot of these things. It's probably a bit too beginner level for you, but if you're kind of just starting out, it's definitely a good resource. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it goes through the crisp, clean basics that oftentimes you need a refresher. Even I go back and like wonder, is this setting right for this? Are these the right settings for this? Is this the
yeah.
way I should do this? And
Mhm.
every time I still go back and sometimes question those. So I think like
Yeah.
your course creates a really great framework for those learnings. So
Yeah.
definitely worth checking out.
Mhm.
What do you think are the changes coming? What do you think? How do you think
Yeah.
you're going to adapt to the changes that probably happen in the next 2025? Right? Do you think you'll be able
Yeah.
to continue with this same strategy for the whole year, or do you think there will be some adaptations that you'll need to make?
Usually adaptations are on the infrastructure side, which you guys are helping with. But when I first started sending cold emails, it was like, when I was still working a W-2 job and we were just sending from a primary domain, like 400 emails out of the inbox, and we were getting pretty good results, like 5, 10, 15 meetings a day. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. So I think just kind of how I anticipate 2025 going, I mean, everybody in lead gen knows this. Like every 3 to 6 months, there's some sort of spam filter update. You got to buy more inboxes, diversify, send less emails per inbox. So I think it's just going to continue that way. Right now, we're sending about 5 to 10 emails per inbox per day, and maybe it'll go below 5, but we're not too
Yeah.
concerned. So,
Yeah, I'm not too concerned. Obviously, we've
I mean, you own the
we
infrastructure. So
yeah,
it's like,
I own the
yeah.
infrastructure, but I mean, it is crazy thinking that a year and a half ago you could send 50 email boxes or inbox emails a day per inbox,
Yeah.
and 5 years ago in Apollo you could send 1,000 per day.
Yeah.
Obviously, the times have changed quite a bit, but um, cool, man.
Yeah. So, I know we've been chatting for a while and you've been bugging me to start using this tool, and I know I need to, but you guys have been working on Rev replies. So like, how's that been going? And like, how can we implement that in our process? Because I think for us, we've always used human reply managers, but as we grow the company, we're kind of seeing like, okay, maybe that's not the best use of resources. So, I mean, curious to see like what you guys have been doing there.
Yeah, yeah. Web reply, man, it's insane right now. It's actually become this incredible tool. And we really built it to um, meet the demands of agency owners and just normal salespeople and sales teams. And
Right.
so basically, right now, it can connect with your Google inbox, your
Hmm.
Outlook inbox, Smart Lead, or Instantly. So it really covers the main four. And the API is coming out in the next week. And so again, you can plug that into whatever tool you want. You can even just have it generate things and just do what you need. But realistically, when emails come in, it
Yeah.
does sentiment analysis on them that's better than any of the instant leads, smart leads, anything that
Sure.
I've seen. It's way better.
Yeah.
It looks at, you can plug as many calendars. So if you've got a team that's doing round robins or whatever, it
Yeah.
will go and look at all of the mutual shared calendars. It'll
Yeah.
figure out how to respond. So, hey, that's love that you're super excited, Jim. We should definitely chat about this over a call. It'll
Sure.
find times. How does tomorrow at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. work? Otherwise, here's my Calendly link. And
Right.
in that, um, so it'll find those availabilities. It'll send those as
Yeah.
one-click meeting booking links. So if they
Okay.
click on them, it will actually send it straight to the calendar. And it
Nice.
does all of that in 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it just continues to follow up. So it continues to follow up every three, or you can set the cadence, but like, let's
Yeah.
say every 3 days, right?
Hmm.
So in 3 days, it'll go back, it'll check your calendar, see, has this person booked? Have they responded? Whatever. If
Yeah.
not, I'm going to follow up again.
Okay.
And so it really gets to learn and know you. Like it learns your case studies. It learns
Yeah.
your, like, how you reply to things. So over time, as you train it, it just gets better and better and better. So,
Nice.
um, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Does it only work with Calendly, or how does that work?
No, man, it works with Google Calendar. It works with like everything. So again,
Okay.
you can, if you just got Google Calendar, you plug it in as an integration. If you and your co-founder have Google Calendar, right? Like
Yeah.
you could plug both of them in. And
Hmm.
so when it's suggesting those times to book on your calendar, it would
Yeah.
look at both of your calendars, find an opening and like block it in.
Nice.
So
Okay. That's pretty solid. Yeah. I'm going to have to start using it soon. I mean, we've been growing, we've been adding a lot of clients recently. So I think it's probably pertinent to start using that instead of hiring someone.
yeah, yeah, man, absolutely. You should give it a shot. So,
If,
I would love to give some sauce to the people that are watching. So why don't you, if you're down for it, walk
sure.
us through like your process beginning to end, whether that's, list building and copywriting or just
Yeah.
why don't you walk us through how you process everything?
Yeah. So I know we talked about this earlier. before, but it's kind of like this, right? So I guess let's start from high level, right? Like let's just get into sort of the basic process of the offer, like how we're structuring that. And that's what you're asking about, right? Like just how we structure the offer, that kind of stuff, right? So I think the biggest thing is to kind of understand there's 3 points to, there's three value propositions, three main value propositions when sending B2B cold emails, right? And where I see a lot of people go wrong on cold email is they're selling a service, they're selling a product, and they're only framing it as a service or product. Like a good example of that would be, you're selling IT services and you send an email saying, hey, look, I offer IT services. Like we're the best. We've been in business for 50 years or whatever. It's like, you'll get results if you send 10,000 emails or 100,000 emails, whatever, but it's like, you're not going to consistently convert and you're just kind of like throwing stuff out there. People may or may not respond. Right. So that's just how it goes there.
Because you're just talking about yourself and you're not
Yeah.
talking about what you mentioned earlier, which
Yeah.
is
You're talking about like
save,
a specific service, product, whatever, but it's like no
save
one.
time, save money, or make money.
Yeah. So we had to tie it to save money, make money, save time, right? One of those three things. And the biggest thing is that's kind of what separates, top 20% cold emailers versus the bottom 80%. And I know we talked about this a lot in WhatsApp, but I would say what separates top 5% cold emailers from top 20% cold emailers is, they obviously talk about the three main value props. They tie the service offering into one of those three value propositions. But the biggest thing that they do differently that I've seen is they explain a unique mechanism to how they do things, right? So it's like, you know, top 20% of cold emailers are probably sending 80% of all the cold emails. So it's like, you got to imagine your prospects are seeing a million emails where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to save you money. I want to save you time. I'm going to make you more money, whatever. So it's like, they get blown up with these offers all the time. And we need to kind of put a unique spin on it, right? And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example of like an SEO agency I work with, right? Like SEO is highly saturated for cold email. Like
Yeah,
probably get like,
insane.
I get like 5 emails a day. I'm not even that important. Like you got to imagine like the people you're sending emails to, they've got to be getting a million of these, right? So
Yeah.
SEO specifically, I like using this example because it's so saturated. So what I've done for SEO and how I'm getting results in SEO is sort of our case study process. Our client has case studies in law, like law firms. They have case studies with nonprofits, whatever, right? We'll use those two as examples. So how most people would send an SEO email, they would say, hey, look, like I can help you get more conversions. I can help you rank higher, leading to more revenue. Like that's how most people would pitch SEO. But we take a step back and we try to make this specific to existing customers and not necessarily just existing customers. Like we do have a process in which we scale up the copy, but to kind of figure out what's converting, what we're basically doing is we're take a step back. And for the examples I gave, let's go with, law firms as an example. Instead of saying, I'll help you rank higher, what I'm saying is like, hey, instead of relying on lead websites like Martindale Nolo, Just Law, or any of these sort of like websites where you can find a lawyer. And then, once you submit your information, that website sells your information to like 5 different law firms. We're saying instead of using these lead gen sites to get cases for your law firm, we can help you get more exclusive leads at a cheaper cost with our law firm search strategy or whatever, right? Just like putting a unique spin on it and speaking their language, if you will. So that's kind of how we've been able to convert some of these offers. Generally, if your service does one of those three things, you should be good. Obviously, like I would say the only two industries where it's like pretty hard to get this to work, IT services, I guess it saves time, but not really. Like people generally don't buy IT services unless they really need it. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's definitely demand capture play.
Yeah.
And then software products with poor product market fit, like which you worked with some, I've worked with a bunch as well. Like there's nothing you can do in those cases. Like,
Tough.
yeah,
Tough.
just ship product. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like nothing you do there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk about how you're working with Clay in your workflows and
Yeah.
how you're kind of bringing data back and forth.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people talk to me. I mean, there's kind of a misconception, like I don't do any like crazy Clay tables, which is partly true. We do have those kind of job scraping. We do run those kind of flows. But of course, like I just mentioned in the previous question you asked, it's like we try to establish a basic fundamental, right? We're saying, hey, look, like this is the pain point that's resonating. These are the personas that are resonating. these are the little nuances we add. This is how we're spinning this offer, etc. So we have some basic understanding of like how the campaigns work before we start blasting it out there, right? So once we have that, the usual Clay play I run is still high volume, but I'm basically taking the inputs from the previous campaign. So let's say I ran a campaign at law firms, at nonprofits, at restaurants or whatever, and each one of those industries talks about their issue in a different way. Like law firms would talk about getting more cases. Nonprofits would be talking more about getting like grantors and donors. Restaurants would be talking about getting like foot traffic or whatever, right? So it's like those three things. We know that we're solving the exact same problem. We're targeting the same people, just different industries. So it's like we have a basic data set. And what we're doing from there is we're going to Clay. I'm pulling, instead of being super targeted, I go and pull a list of, let's say, all CMOs or VPs of marketing, whatever. And I have this massive list of people. We go ahead and scrape the company description. And then we have GPT basically create a prompt to describe our solution in a way that's relevant to the industry. And we just give examples of our previous campaigns where we've had success, like running those campaigns. We just give them the campaigns as an output, just so it can kind of see, okay, this is like what you should talk about, etc. And that's generally how we're scaling these campaigns. And of course, it's like, that's the main play. We do also run job trigger plays for certain clients. Like I have some VA staffing clients where it's like, we're scraping for certain jobs and we're just reaching out to them and say, hey, look, like we can fill this job. I saw you have this requirement. We can do it for 80% cheaper and we'll even train them for you. So it's like,
Yeah. And I've
case by
seen like
case.
a bunch of your customization. I mean, hell, we built a lot of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And I know that you, use a lot of them, but I think that one of the things, like, again, and I certainly don't mean to impress upon people that your campaigns are simplistic in any way. I
Yeah.
think that you are fundamentally the most sound lead gen agency out there,
Yeah.
and you create, you get the fundamentals down, and then you can go crazy, right? Then you can do
Yeah.
the customizations and the personalizations and the, hey, I saw, this person just left your company. I bet you're looking to refill that position.
Yeah.
Like you can do whatever you want from there.
Yeah.
But if the value prop still doesn't sing, the whole thing is toast, right?
Exactly. Like that stuff does work. Like I feel like I used to try a lot of that stuff before I had really sound fundamentals and it would just not work. Like I did be like, oh, great email, but we're not interested. So like, what's the point? I just spent all this time making this Clay table. It's like a waste of time. But it's like that stuff does work. Like if you have a sound email as a base and then you add that sort of stuff, like you're gonna have very high conversion rates. But it's like you said, you just gotta have the fundamentals in place. And yeah, I would actually say, yeah, my campaigns are pretty simplistic. Like we try not to overcomplicate things. Way we see it is like you have a bad offer, well, you're just going to get worse results. Like that's just how it is, right? Like unless whoever you're working with, or maybe it's your own company, unless you're willing to be a bit more flexible, make the offer a bit more friendly to cold traffic. Like that's why I would say is that's the only way to really save your campaign. Like if you've done all this stuff and your campaign's still doing shit, like it's probably your fault, realistically. It's probably an offer problem. So
I've seen it, man. I did. I remember like so many times on the come up, us comparing notes on campaigns, and I'm like, why is my campaign not working, but why is yours like getting a 1 in
and
50
vice versa
response?
too.
And it was like, just because your shit is fire and it is all perfect, it's all, and
Yeah.
it's the minutia that like I clearly wasn't seeing. And I think that you're really incredibly in tune
Yeah.
with, will this sell or won't it sell? And I think that goes even back from your fundamental days, man.
Mhm.
Like you were the #1 sales rep at Zoom Info or whatever back in the
SDR.
day, where you cut your teeth, and then
Yeah.
you moved over into this industry and you've killed it ever since, man. So
Yeah. And it's like, I remember we were comparing notes like probably 2 years ago. And it's like, I had clients performing like shit. And you had some as well. I think we compared notes. We were just kind of like, wait, these guys just sell something that nobody wants. Like,
yeah,
that's like, I hate saying it sounds really cocky to say this, but I would say you and I are at the level of cold email where it's like, if we take on a client, we actually put in some effort, like we put in time and effort to like figure out the angles. Let's say after like 3 to 6 months, it's not working. Like, that's an offer problem. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Like
yeah.
that's not a me problem. Unless it's something like cybersecurity. That's why I don't take it because I don't understand it well enough. But if it's like not working, that's probably I hate this. I hate saying this, but like not our
There's
problem.
some channels, man, where it's like you should be considering other channels as more effective channels, whether that, I mean, paid media, whatever. Like, like this may not be the channel for you. Most of the times I'm confident we can crack it. But
Yeah.
again, selling a SaaS for $20 a month, like, it's going to be tough, right? Like cold
Yeah.
email is meant for,
Higher
uh,
ticket.
if you're going to sell that, you need to be able to do volume. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, that's good
I
insights, man.
guess
Appreciate you.
one more thing I do want to add as well. So it's like, it's very interesting. I think you brought up all the different channels. Like I would say generally, we talked about this. If I'm assessing a client, if they're able to convert cold traffic, that's a good sign. However, this is something I've realized very recently as well. It's like email might not necessarily be the best channel because we talked about this in DM, you and I. I have a client, we target life insurance brokers. We're sending a ton of emails. And I think part of the issue is like to some of these life insurance brokers that work at these massive companies, crazy spam filters, whatever. And it's like, yes, we can get through to those, but a lot of them have like Proofpoint, Mimecast, whatever, kind of hard to get to the spam filter. So we've kind of shifted gears and we're using LinkedIn for the ones that work at larger companies. And that's been doing pretty well. So it's like sometimes email is not the right channel. And that's also why we're starting to use other channels besides email, even though my company name is Cold Email Hackers. Like that was a
Yeah,
recent case.
that is going to be really important in the next year. You
Yeah.
know, like everything is cyclical. I always say it. Like I remember in 2018 being like,
Yeah.
one day we're going to send handwritten letters again, and like, God damn it,
We're getting back to that, dude.
we're getting back to that. And
Yeah.
so the thing about LinkedIn is if you can start to build that system and scale it, which it's tough, right?
Yes.
You have to do a whole bunch of things that LinkedIn doesn't like, just putting it
Hmm.
out there.
Same with
Um,
email.
you have to do volume, but if you can get people and you don't pitch slap them,
Yeah.
you can have that ear forever
Yeah.
because you will always make it into their LinkedIn DMs. You will
Yeah.
always. So as long as you don't start out with some shit message of, hey, here's why you should buy my product,
Yeah.
like as long as you start a good thing, you can hit them up every 3 to 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Or even less than that, really. But like the
Hmm.
idea is, and what we're all trying to avoid in the next coming years
Yeah.
is this cycle of email fatigue. What is
Yes.
email fatigue for me? It's changes constantly, but remember, like
Yeah.
obviously checking in and bumps, those used to work. Now it's like
Yeah.
every time I see it, just checking in, like it makes me like,
Reported spam.
dude. And so if you can create a cycle where every 45 to 60 days you can hit people up, but you bring new value every time,
Yeah.
that's kind of going to be the key in the coming
Mhm.
years. So, and maybe that cycle will change again, but like
Yeah.
you can't burn people out, otherwise you're screwing yourself. So,
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, yeah, kind of going back to basics. I know everyone was going crazy with email past 2, 3 years, but then it's like, I used to cold call a ton. That seems to be getting popular again, right? So it's like, I
yep.
don't know. It's all cyclical, but I also think like email is always, as long as it's a viable communication channel, and obviously I'm biased, but like as long as it's a viable communication channel, there is going to be some way around it. I may be wrong. I hope I'm not wrong,
There will
but
always be a cold email hacker.
there always will be a way to get around. So
Yeah.
there is that. But yeah, that's pretty much it on my end. Not sure if there's anything else you want to talk about.
No, man. Appreciate you coming on, dude.